I'm glad everybody could make this uh, session today. It is really kind of short notice, but we really plan on having more of these just as things develop over time. I know, okay, wait, somebody's waiting to enter the room. Let's go ahead and admit. And Imam Abdullah is also here. I don't know if you want to get us started, inshallah, before we can go ahead and just lay just some basic kind of general topics we were going to discuss and then open up to Q&A, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Alhamdulillah. We are honored that you're joining us. This is an important conversation. We've been getting a lot of calls, a lot of concerns over the past days and weeks. So inshallah, we'll give it 2, 3 more minutes to allow our community to join. Inshallah, this is a statewide meeting. We have over 60 people on the call already. We did get a number of people registering last minute, so we're hoping, inshallah, a good representation, and then we can utilize this to get the word out. And we're also hoping, inshallah, to have more ongoing conversations. This is going to be more general. We will open up to Q&A, but as you all can tell from what's been happening, we may have to have more conversations to continue to drive some strategic front, inshallah. There will be some similar challenges that we face as a community, but there may be particular issues that organizations face, individuals face, and we're seeing them already at a national level, but also here. Not to dive too deep, but we have already seen that our respected governor has already called for special sessions to address some of these issues. So almost in a way to make matters even more dangerous, if you will, for minorities already struggling in Florida. Inshallah. So we have community members still joining. We are at 74 right now, again. And I do see, alhamdulillah, wonderful representation. Many of these names I'm familiar with. And we have from community leaders to imams to principals of, mashallah, amazing Islamic schools. So again, we are definitely honored to have all of you with us today.
That's 7:05. I don't know if we
Yeah.
maybe if this is recorded, we can go ahead and get started.
Yes. Inshallah. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi man wala. It doesn't need to be mentioned, but the reminder is beneficial for the Muslim. وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. The one who places his or her trust in Allah, Allah is sufficient for him or her, and we ask Allah to be sufficient for us. And this morning, one of my dear brothers, Brother Edward, said something. He said, we didn't elect a king, we elected a president. That means the constitution is still in place, and that's important. We are not subjects, and this is not a monarchy. So, the man in the White House is not sitting on a throne, and no matter how much a individual or the people around him may think so, that is not what the reality is. So, yes, what we're witnessing today may be almost by the rule of executive orders and rule of decree, a strong attempt, dangerous attempt to push through policies and trample on the very foundation of this nation by sidelining immigrants and minorities. But we know that this is the same game we've seen before. And when I sent out this earlier today, when I decided that we need to have this conversation statewide, I emphasized to the CAIR-Florida team, and I want to emphasize to you that we're not doing this from a place of fear. We're doing this in an effort to say we're doubling down. We're more than committed than ever before to protect our communities, our institutions, and we will work with minorities who are suffering the same way. So we know the game, alhamdulillah, and we will make sure that no power is unchecked and no power is abused to the best of our ability. And as the Muslim community in particular, alhamdulillah, we have gone a long way Having said that, what I will say before I turn it over to Brother Omar, who is our managing attorney, and my dear brother as well, Bob Sichta, who is our senior immigration attorney, I wanted to have them both join because many of the conversations and calls that we're getting, the concerns we're addressing, are going to fall into this legal realm, if you will. So the first thing that we have to keep in mind is the Constitution is still in place. So take the birthright citizenship issue, for example. It has already, although the executive order was signed, it has already been challenged in court, right? So the what we're seeing is it's more of a design to intimidate, to dehumanize, right? But yes, there are elements of the executive order when it comes to undocumented individuals that are dangerous, that do put people within our community and even maybe for some of us, our loved ones at risk. But again, I want us to be rest assured that many of these issues have already been challenged by judges and put on halt. And we're going to see that again and again. Just earlier this morning, we were addressing a nationwide issue of a potential federal freeze of funds. And just in the afternoon, we saw that that had been rescinded, at least for now. So we're seeing legal challenges, these issues being challenged in court, and will continue to do so. These orders are not final, they are not absolute, and they will not go unchallenged. But we need to be on the know. We need to know what we need to do to protect ourselves, our masajid, our organization, our institutions that we have worked so hard to build. And I'll end with this. It's important for you as leaders to know you can educate your communities, your parents, your students, your congregants. The most common issues that Brother Omar will highlight and Bob will talk about it's when people talk to law enforcement, people get into trouble, people, our community, as much as we love our community, we do things that get us into more trouble. So knowing your rights, knowing how to navigate is so important, being in the know. So again, we're hoping that this is going to be the beginning of a conversation, inshallah. So tonight, we're not just here to talk. We're here to share with you. We're here to take questions. We're here to prepare, inshallah, so that we know that everybody that's here is listening actively. You know what's at stake, but you also know what you have to do to protect yourself and the community. And we're in this together. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So with that, I'm going to turn over to our managing attorney, Brother Omar Saleh. And then we'll go to Bob Sichta, and then we'll be opening for, inshallah, questions. Brother Omar, go ahead.
Jazakallah khairan, Imam Abdullah, and assalamu alaikum to everyone here. Glad to be on here and just really just honored to be working with an awesome team, including Bob Sichta, who's here with us. We're hearing so many of just not just a concern from the community, but questions. And I want to get right into one question from Sister Fatima, who says, please explain the birthright citizenship. Does it affect us? Will our naturalized citizen children be subjected to difficulty at immigration when traveling? And so I'm going to make a short answer and then pass to Bob. But the short answer is uh, uh, what it is a constitutional grant of citizenship automatically by anyone who's born here. This is, will our naturalized children be subject to difficulty at immigration when traveling? Where if they were born here as automatic and they were given birthright citizenship, then no. And the most recent executive order would be it would be into the future, but that was also stricken down by a court. So that right now does not apply. But Bob, unless you want to add anything to that, I was going to get into the two topics we were going to discuss today. Overall, are the nonprofit funding or the federal funding pause, and then the ICE raids that we've been hearing about. But go ahead, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. Alaikum salam, everyone. It's really important to note on the birthright citizenship issue that while we think the law, the way it's plainly written, and the way the Constitution specifically reads is going to protect us, but we don't know. And the reason we don't know is because this is going to get to the Supreme Court. It'll take a while, but it's going to get there. I predict, and I know I'm right, that every court along the way is going to say, yep, you got birthright citizenship. It relates back to the Dred Scott decision about whether a fugitive slave who came to a free state could gain their freedom and were property, and it was to counter that because it's part of the 14th Amendment. The language is not mushy. The language is specific. It is exact that you are a citizen if you were born in the United States. Having said that, the Supreme Court might carve something out. We don't know. Just right now, we're okay. What does that mean about the past? If you're already a citizen, you're good. You really are. Don't worry. Again, I'm going with the plain language of the Constitution, which says no ex post facto laws. All right. An ex post facto law is one that makes something you did yesterday illegal. So even though it wasn't illegal yesterday when you did it, we passed a law to say what you did yesterday can cause you to be arrested. The Constitution specifically, again, says no ex post facto. Well, we'll see what the Supreme Court does. Right now, we're okay. That's why we're talking today. We've got to be on top of this. Go ahead, Omar. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Bob. No, it's someone's asking, please explain this in light of the 14th Amendment with the mid-set of the LBJ law. Um, good legal question there. And Shirley, we're going to leave our emails in the chat. And someone else is asking, I just joined. What can we talk about? Customs issues, the recent FBI visits. Yes, that is it. The two main topics are that, as well as, I mean, we also recently heard that the federal funding pause has been rescinded, and so there were concerns of organizations. We were on a call this morning regarding orgs that have been told that they might not receive reimbursements for certain payments. And so right now that should not be a concern. And so that really, inshallah, but leaves us with the more serious concerns that we've been hearing about, which are the series of raids across the country and also some legislations in parts of the country involving uh, bounty hunters. We're in Florida and we haven't heard anything like that, but actually across the nation, what we're hearing is that there might be some state legislation authorizing that, and which is bizarre. And for our purposes here in Florida, there are raids across the state that we've been hearing about. And what we know is that the people who are most at risk are people without immigration status. Bob will clarify more about that, about status. And an asylum seeker is somebody who may not need to worry and be concerned about their status if they're visited by immigration and they do have rights. We want to go over those rights and make sure everybody understands those rights and educates others with them. And whoever's not here, we do have information. I think it was already posted in the chat. So uh, besides the non-citizens without immigration status, ICE is also looking for people with certain types of convictions, prior orders for deportation, or people who are believed to be a threat. Well, now, that's generally speaking, it doesn't mean that people can't get caught in the middle of that. What's most important, and I'm going to start it the first time and repeat this throughout the talk, and
Bob, we may have lost Omar there for a second. So if you want to
Yeah, I think we're frozen just for a second. Let's give him a second. If not, then we'll pick up some things while
and
we're waiting. There he is.
it, yeah, you were
we
going to say
lost you
something,
there,
Bob?
Omar, for about a minute. We lost you there for about 30 seconds.
Okay,
Yeah, you're good now. The screen froze.
30 seconds. Okay. Um, I'll just get straight to the customs. Bob, I think one explanation about the status, if you want to explain to us between the asylum.
Yep. Now, let me talk about that in a couple of ways, if that's okay. First of all, the fact that you have status doesn't mean you're going to be able to keep it or that you're going to get asylum if you use that as an example. But it does mean you're safe and you're here for a while. So status, what is status? Status is being here with some kind of document or documentation that says you're allowed to be here. All right. Your birth certificate is status. That's cool. Means you're an American citizen, at least for now. Okay. A visa that says you can be here for a while is status. If you have filed for asylum and you have a receipt for that, that's status. And we've even been able to cover that, fortunately, in a way where when we have mailed off an application for asylum, we have been able to simply give people status by being able to prove that it's been submitted, right? Even though they don't have a receipt yet, which usually takes about a month. But if you have a receipt for something, a receipt for filing for asylum, a receipt for filing for a green card, a receipt for filing something called an I-130, which is a process that precedes a green card, a receipt for almost anything, or anything on a visa, like a J-1 visa to come here for particular kinds of studying, or an F-1 visa for students specifically, or an R-1 visa or a K visa. These are all different kinds of visas. That gives you status. I explained it earlier today in another way. When you hear the word refugee, if it's a capital R, you got status. You're a refugee, because refugee is a legal thing. If it's capital R, you came here, landed in the U.S. as a refugee. If it's a small r, no, you're just fleeing something. But you can get status as a small r, as an asylum applicant, capital A, asylum applicant. And if you get asylum, you are what's called an asylee, capital A. All those things are status. They allow you to be here. Most of those things allow you to get something called an EAD. Yeah, you're probably familiar with that unless you're a lawyer, but EAD means Employment Authorization Document. You call it a work card, not a green card, that's different. But if you've got an EAD, that shows your status. It expires at a point in time, but you can renew it usually. So a work card gives you status, the right to be here. Sometimes a combination of documents gives you status. Sometimes your green card has expired, but you have a receipt showing that you applied for a renewed green card before the old one expired. Those two documents combine and they give you status. Anything that is documentation will allow you to be here. And that is terribly important right now. Doesn't mean you're going to win in the long run. Doesn't mean you're going to get a green card. Doesn't mean you're going to get citizenship, even though you've applied. Doesn't mean you're going to get asylum. But you've got status. If you're in immigration court, one of our clients asked me for this today because they wanted a little more support, a little more documentation in their hand. I sent them an extra copy of the notice that requires them to be in court and says when they have to be in court. You can flash that at somebody who tries to stop you, an ICE or a regular person on the street, a policeman, whatever, and say, I have status. I am due in court on this date. This shows what my status is on the notice to appear. All these things are status. If you cross the border without documentation and you immediately apply for asylum, you have status. It's when you don't have anything and you're hiding that you're in trouble. Or you can lose your status by getting arrested for shoplifting, getting arrested for robbing a bank, getting arrested for dealing in drugs. Our clients tend not to do that. And by the way, Omar said something earlier about that. He alluded to the idea that they're going to do raids and pick up people who have committed crimes. Well, you know what? That's not new. It's kind of like the headline yesterday about the Army going into California to do something about their water supply. It was the Army Corps of Engineers, which is almost entirely civilian. About 5/6 of the people in the Army Corps of Engineers are civilians, and they're always there. They didn't show up, and they were always doing their work. It didn't suddenly appear. It's the same thing here. You've always got it. It's always been there. You've always got status when that happens. Now, I'm belaboring that a bit, but I'm also doing that so that I can hopefully see Omar's smiling face on the screen again. I'm not sure where he went off to.
I'm
There he
here,
is.
but I only went off vid because my internet connection was a little unstable, so to kind of save on that, I don't know if that's right.
Yeah.
So I don't want to cut off again. But we have a question here that there's many refugees in Jacksonville. Please let us know about their legal situation and status. I'm going to leave my email for these individual questions. You can reach out to us directly. Um, what question? What should we do if some of our schools are targeted within Florida's laws? And again, I'm going to say it again. I mean, you need to have, if not an attorney, then our office. on dial. So if you do run into any issues, we can do as best as possible to help. If there are if there is ice at somebody's door and they want to enter in, you do not need to let them in and should not let them in unless they have a judicial warrant that is separate from a detention warrant, which does not grant entry. And the way to tell if the warrant is a judicial warrant is should have a signature by a magistrate or a federal judge at the bottom. If ICE does need to enter or interact with somebody, certainly, again, it's like just it's a lot almost exactly like law enforcement, which is you need to remain silent, um, invoke your right to counsel, and don't lie about your status. Um, that somebody said ICE tried to raid an elementary school in Chicago yesterday, 2 days ago. Intention was to, and a lot of this is about scaring. School successfully blocked ICE from entering the school. And so what's important about that is that if places like schools and nonprofit orgs really need to make explicit at their entrances and exits, like rear places of entry, that it's a private residence and that there's no trespassing, that is private property and that there's no trespassing. That should be made clear. I know there's some orgs that are distributing signs just to make it clear so that agents don't help themselves to just walk inside any establishment thinking that they can go, and that's how seizures are happening. Somebody says, "Is it true that any legislation passed and gets signed into law or becomes statute without governor's signature will not actually become effective until July 1st?" Not always true. What if a woman is divorcing from husband and had a worker's permit? Can her divorce affect her status?
Yep, it can. Can I pace back to one thing you mentioned earlier, by the way, and that is we
Yes.
are now seeing ICE being allowed to come to schools and stand outside courtrooms and even go in them. This was barred. This is now back. This means that there's going to be what we call a chilling effect. It's going to scare people into missing their appointments, either at the USCIS or at ICE or at an immigration court, any of those things. Can't be intimidated by that. You got to go anyway. Don't worry about it. But there is going to be a renewed presence there. They're looking for particular things. Now, if you're somebody who was already pulled over for a DUI, they're probably looking for you. But if you have a speeding ticket, yeah, nah, that used to not be a problem. Might be a little marginal now, but now let's come back. Let me take us out of the. That's a broad brush I just painted. Let's come back to what we mentioned earlier. Omar, what was your last point on your question?
Just about making it clear in your establishments that property isn't to be entered, because at
Yeah,
home it's pretty clear and you don't have to open your door. But
yeah,
in, let's say, organizations that service the community where the door is open, it shouldn't mean that, you know, it needs to be made explicit
yeah,
that it's private property.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
last point.
Your organization has the right to bar entry to anyone. You can. Now, you can't discriminate in that sense. There's still a civil rights issue with respect to race and gender and things like that. But you can bar entrance to people. And something that we've mentioned earlier, we mention this all the time now. We always come back to it on the warrant issue that you heard of. A warrant shows up at your door for some reason. Okay. It's not only got to be signed, it's got to be signed by a judge. A magistrate will do a judge who is a federal judge or a state court judge or a magistrate for either one. If it is signed by an immigration judge, it is ineffective. Immigration judges can't issue warrants. Somehow, somewhere, some of them do. I don't know where they get that idea or what spurs them on in that regard. And that's why you want to see a warrant every time. And because you don't want to open your door when people come to your door, you want it slid under the door. You want to take a picture of it with your cell phone. You want to call us or somebody we've referred you to or someone you've already got as an immigration lawyer, and you want them to look at that and talk about it. You want them to view it. And then you want, frankly, to put your phone up to the door. I didn't mention this earlier, kind of fun, but I've had this, where you put your phone up to the door and say, okay, person outside, here's my lawyer. He's going to talk to you through the door on my phone. These phones are your magic lifesavers right now in a lot of ways. They're not in others, because if they get their hands on your phone, they're going to find something in that to pick you apart. I want to take this into another area just quickly in that regard. We need to be aware right now that you are going to be picked apart. You are going to be nibbled to pieces on things. People are going to be so exacting in their standards, in the way they treat you and in the way they interact with you, to try and catch you in some way, to make sure to see if they can bait you into breaking a law or a rule or a regulation. You have to be on guard for that now. You didn't have to before. Now you do, because the slightest thing you do is going to encourage somebody to determine that you are a quote unquote lawbreaker who needs to be taken away. Now, again, that's for those of you who are not citizens. We'll see where that goes on citizenship. I like to think that at least for those who are citizens as of today, you're okay. But we don't know about tomorrow, because I told you, when it gets to the Supreme Court, hopefully they will read the Constitution the way it reads to all the rest of us and say, nah, you're born here as a citizen. And by the way, there's an irony in this. I don't know if anybody's ever mentioned this. Our new Secretary of State, former Senator Marco Rubio, right, was born to undocumented parents in Florida. Now, he's a birthright citizen, right? And he wouldn't be if we followed this new rule. So, and that's, which means he could be a senator, and he couldn't be certainly couldn't be a Secretary of State. Certainly couldn't have run for president, because the rule is very hard and fast in the Constitution about presidents. They have to be born in the U.S. or a territory. Remembering that John McCain was born in the Panama Territory while his dad was in the Navy. That made him a citizen. So birthright citizen has a wide spread that we don't think about when we throw this garbage in the air to scare people, which is probably the biggest part of all this. This is intended to intimidate you. You can't let it. Don't let the chilling effect hit you. You call us, you stand up for yourself, we'll do what we can. And I think our odds are pretty good at keeping you safe.
Thank you so much, Brother Omar. Could you backtrack and explain? You mentioned masajid, schools, other entities. You are private, and you should have a very clear, visible post that says private property. Could you explain that? I know that's going to be maybe an immediate action item.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's important to do that, because the agents just an agent should know that they're not just able to go in and search. That needs to, and one of the ways you make that clear, and to have somebody there who can identify that this is going on at a place of worship. If that does happen, I think Bob mentioned earlier too, you could take a picture of a warrant and send it directly to an attorney. And if there is actually a signed judicial warrant that has a signature by a judge, which ICE typically doesn't, it's not common, but if it is, then whoever is going there for a search needs to be accompanied by a member of the place of worship. But on that point, it's good to have it at the door and inside, that that it's private property, no trespassers. And I think Bob also mentioned a point earlier today about having a gun-free zone, which is,
you can do it. Let me circle back to something else you mentioned, Omar, because it was a really good point you made, and that is they can lie to you. Now, we didn't say this earlier, but we said it in a meeting earlier today. The cops can lie to you. You can't lie to them, right? You have to tell them the truth. So why even talk to them, right? Don't. Which is hard. I know it's hard. We want to do the right thing. We figure we don't have anything to hide. We're honest, decent people. So what's wrong with talking to them? No. We've had this at airports for years. People come through customs, they profile them and start talking to them about Islam, engage them in a conversation. The next thing you know, they're rejecting their entry and knocking out their visa, because it doesn't pass some conversational standard for somebody who's got a half-grade education, who's working there at customs that day. You don't talk to people.
Yeah, exactly. Just like in law enforcement, and Lizette's asking, I understood message and are public property. Churches are public property. They're not. They're private property. And that so the same goes with, asking if an agent has a warrant.
Yeah.
So that is
I'm
very
gonna,
important. Yeah,
Brother, I'm
sorry.
gonna go back. There's a few other questions that I think would be helpful. One is, there was a question about if a woman is divorcing her from her husband and had a worker's permit. Bob, you mentioned that her status would be affected.
Yep.
So that's one. And then another one is, what about business owners that pay immigrants or students students that are registered in college? So you have immigrant students that are registered in college. How does this affect them? Business owners that pay immigrants, and then
Yep.
students who are registered in college.
Let me talk about the lady first, because every case is unique. Even if they're on the same subject, like two ladies with situations like that, they're really each unique. We need to know underlying things. The general rule with the lady would be that if her only attachment to the United States is that her husband is a green card or citizen, right? And she's got everything through him, and he abandons her, tosses her out, or whatever, she can be in trouble. But this is why you call us, because if we can't handle it, we're going to get you to somebody who can with respect to immigration issues. VAWA is a very real possibility in a circumstance like that. And during that time, she can keep her work card or get a new one under a different filing. And even though you're poor, you can get fees waived for most of this stuff because you qualify by being indigent in those regards or newly indigent because of what's happened. So that's one. That again, we have to look at it, but that's the general rule. And yeah, we can help her. We can make her safe. Now, with respect to uh, let's see,
Business
work,
owners.
work. So let's take a few of every work issue relates to the kind of visa you have. If you're an F1 student, F1 is students, right? If you're an F1 student on that kind of a visa, you can work, but it's limited. Just it always has been. You can only work so many hours a week, and you have to work within certain geographic parameters, usually the campus, right? Sometimes it has to be related to whatever you're studying. That ties more into J1 visas than into F1s, but because they're both sort of studying type visas. Um, so you have that issue of limitations just because of it. We have had the unique situation of having an F1 student from a country that is undergoing terrible hostilities, and they came to us and asked for asylum because of the things they were studying, the things they said, and the way the word had gotten back to their home country. So we got them an asylum applicant. We got them going as an asylum applicant, and guess what? With that, they were able to get a regular work card so they could work full time anywhere. Kind of weird, but you can do that. There's nothing wrong with it. So it all depends on the individual visa that's involved. But there are ways, and they're not hard. They're there. They're built there for everybody, right? To help you get the right to work. And that work card then becomes gold because you're now holding a document that has a time parameter on it. Other than TPS and a couple of visas that we're probably never going to see, most work cards nowadays are issued for 5 years. Okay, 5 years. How long is somebody going to be president for? If nothing else, do that math. These cards are good for 5 years. And the cards give you status. They say you have the right to be here. Nobody can remove you unless you committed a crime. So again, this is where you got to be careful. You walk through a Macy's and you brush against a pair of shoes, and somebody accuses you of trying to steal the shoes. Be careful. Don't be alone. Take that phone. Record things. You got to protect yourself. Omar, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Thank you, Bob. No, it's worth just keeping repeating that, especially if someone's approached by law enforcement, including ISIS, to remain silent. Someone says, "I'm in New Jersey. Any idea who I can contact in New Jersey?" Yes, so we know there's a CAIR chapter in New Jersey, and we can follow through. I did put it in info@CAIR-Florida.com, but there is, if you can search, there is a CAIR New Jersey chapter that's excellent.
Yeah.
And if you have any issues, getting in touch, please stay in touch.
Bob, there's one more question. If you have a house rented and the tenant is not documented, can the landlord be liable?
No, that's fascinating. I love that question. I've had that before. No, not knowingly liable. Okay, you have to have an awareness. Now, if they know that you're undocumented, yeah, but even that gets real sketchy. Okay, because an undocumented person can rent any building, can buy any car, can buy any house. They don't have to live there. You can be living in Brazil and rent a house or buy one here and own it and never show up in the US. So there's nothing wrong with you as an undocumented person having any involvement in real estate in the United States. It's perfectly fine, which is weird because Mexico doesn't allow that. But that's a whole other thing. I used to be on the ABA committee for Mexico a long time ago. It's kind of weird.
I mean, yeah, I would just add to that, like it's really also dependent on the jurisdiction and sort of zone that somebody's in that might apply to any, violations.
Mhm.
Generally, legally not. And somebody says, can you address the president's statement, quote unquote, immediate action by the Justice Department to prosecute terroristic threats, arson, vandalism, and violence against American Jews and marshal all federal resources to combat the explosion of anti-Semitism in our campuses? To all our resident aliens. I will also quickly cancel the student visas of all Hamas sympathizers on college campuses, which have been infested with radicalism like never before. That we've heard of that. We heard about the cancellation of
Yeah.
the student visas, and we haven't seen anything. I haven't heard of those yet. And a lot of these, I think, out the bat. I mean, Trump's already had two of his executive, well, one rejected by, well, there were two, I believe, court stays followed by rescinding the an order. So with this, I don't know, might be another one of those, but we haven't heard of it yet. And it's certainly disturbing if it is that attempt to do it because
This
it
is
becomes
this is
also,
where chilling effect comes back in. Okay, because the reality, and this is reminiscent again back in the 60s when we took buildings on campuses to protest the war, right? Well, people got expelled for that. This last year, people were in campuses taking buildings, occupying things, and all that because of what was going on in Gaza, right? And a lot of people either got suspended or they had something happening with their grades. They were disqualified in certain ways, and they were taken out of student government positions. All these things happen. Campuses can do that, and if you are not a U.S. citizen, you jeopardize other things. But I think it takes a lot of guts for somebody to say going to Harvard or Princeton, who's even a U.S. citizen, to sit down in a building and say I'm not moving because it was hard to get into that school, and you're paying a ton of tuition, or your parents are, or both. And so that's a really significant move on your part. If you're from another country and you do that, you know, this chills you. Well, I'd like to involve myself in the protests. I'd like to be there and engage and help others, support them, but I don't dare. So now they're holding a little box out in front of this thing, giving saying, leave money here for students so we can buy food while we're occupying the building so we can eat, right? You drop a buck in, and somebody accuses you of contributing to this organization and then tries to nail you that way. These are all things that have been tried in the past, not so much by universities or schools of different kinds, but by the police. You have to be aware that you are risking a lot whenever you're involved in these things. And so, yeah, I'm a bit of a coward on that. I'd probably sit back and stay out of the way because I understand the risk you're taking. But you can't. You can only be pushed so far. We all have our limit, and the only limit I have in any of that is you do not get violent. Never get violent, and never do anything that gives somebody the impression that you're being violent. If you push somebody away, somebody's going to say you were violent. Literally.
yeah, that's these, by the way, I want to also reiterate. Somebody says, I just want to take a moment to remind everyone not to forget the incredible work that. Okay, well, but we put our thank you very much, Jazakallah khairan. We put our email address at the top. I wanted to address a question because Muslim schools we've gotten a few calls from Islamic schools about just concerns about Governor DeSantis's maybe forthcoming measures about funding. And look, I want to kind of underscore this to the community, pass it along to Bob, take one more question, and then we're going to wrap this up at about 45, is that until we kind of see these measures taken, I think what's most important is that we stay in discussion. But until that happens, the legal challenges really aren't ripe for anything. Um, but it doesn't mean that sometimes we have to take action for the chilling effect, which Bob mentioned earlier. So, Bob, Bob, do you have anything to add to just what we can do? I mean, Bob has been through the civil rights. This is almost as like a second civil rights era, maybe third that Bob has been in.
Yeah.
So he could definitely his insight. It's definitely awesome to have him here to kind of share that insight on how when there's new people that come in office, not just presidents but governors, what might orgs and places of worships.
It'd be fun if it wasn't so horrific because there's so much at risk. Again, you have to plan in advance. You have to prepare yourself. You have to make sure that you don't make the wrong kinds of waves. So you're going to have your phone because we literally all have them now. If you don't have a phone, then I'm a little concerned about you. And you're going to use this as your tool. You're going to be careful what's on this thing so the people can't open it and look at stuff and say, oh, you got this from that guy or so and so sent you this. That means you're a whatever, right? A terrorist or whatever, or a member of some organization that are going to try and brand you. But this is what you're going to use to call. You're going to have a directory of people to call. You're going to have a lawyer on that list, or you're going to have us on that list to get you to what. You're going to have people who you care about and who care about you on here to reach out to because you may get arrested and need bail. And those people are the ones who are going to do it. So this becomes your tool. And you're going to have a backup person, a backup plan. You've got to plan for this now. You didn't have to do this before. It's all new now. In the past, you kind of did it because it made sense. Now you got to do it to protect yourself. So you're in a whole different mode. You start with this. Keep it charged, keep it handy, have a backup person or system. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot because you can hopefully hear between the lines the things I'm saying. It's not just doing these basic things, it's all the threads that come out of it. And if you can do that, you're probably going to be safe. And the reason I say probably is because, if anybody had told me that when the Supreme Court handed down its decision on what the president's powers were in various ways this last fall, I would have said that that case has no chance at all. The Supreme Court's going to slap it down because of all the precedent out there that says a president is not a king. And then the Supreme Court decided otherwise. So we don't know where we are, folks. Don't go pretending you think we do.
Exactly. I mean, exactly. And that's the point. And that is another reason why, and I know this is, and I don't want to end this too abruptly, but this was supposed to be a short kind of call to a meeting to discuss these topics. We will have more of these, and you will get another link. Somebody says, any thoughts on Canadians and visas? Again, please stay in touch through our link on these specific questions. But Bob, unless you want to add anything, we're going to bring it to a close and ask everyone that one pager. We did put a one pager at the top regarding the immigration concerns, and things are happening day by day. So tomorrow's discussion might be different if we have one, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan for everybody to attend. And Bob, once again, I really appreciate all the time and showing up. This is his second kind of short notice call that he's today.
It's what we do.
Yeah.
It's what we do. We're here. Thank you, Omar. That was awesome. And Abdullah, without Abdullah, we wouldn't be doing this, folks. You need to thank that guy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody, please stay in touch. Have a good night. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.